Good. I got the text. You said you have to get the microphone set up because you are steaming about something in the news today. You're taking a moment, a breath. What are you doing over there?
Well, Betsy, I'm glad you did. I know I've been slacking off lately. But
No, you haven't. Oh my God, he's just kidding. I've been working the boys in the conclave really hard, people, for the last few days. They're thoroughly exhausted, but we've got some great videos coming to you. We went to the studio, so we actually had real camera people, and we've got some great material coming out. But you didn't text me and say, get over here and turn on that damn microphone for that. What do you want to say?
I just want to say things about what Mueller's indictments of these imaginary Russians, what that's really about.
Oh, that's right, because you read the indictments today.
Because people are going to be very, very concerned because it ranges from some people swearing this proves Russian collusion with the Trump team because it says Russians interfered with the election, and it says that some of those Russians disguised and or working through other U.S. persons contacted the Trump team. So one could read this from the side of the liberal progressive as, oh, this is absolute truth. Trump had a collusion with the Russians. It's the exact opposite. This is what happened. As we pointed out from the beginning, and even before Mueller was appointed, and then the second he was appointed, we said that Mueller would simply go and get Paul Manafort, who he has been he and his team trying to get since 2005. And that's what happened. He and Gates, his partner. And what they get, Manafort's going to come back on him and probably have the whole thing thrown out. We know that Michael Flynn's lawyers said, hey, whoa, the only man who was there for the interview that you say that I have, in fact, perjured myself on was Peter Strzok with his report, an FBI 302 report, and that we're throwing that out because, look, Peter Strzok's already been shown to be more than partisan. Then you have Carter Page, who is not going to do much because why? He is Comey's Russian spy. He was used as an asset to go after the Russians, and so of course he couldn't have been in contact with the Russians for anything serious. They already know that he was used as a Russian spy. Then you have Felix Sater, another Comey Russian spy. Then you have Dmitry Alperovich, another Comey spy. But when I would be shocked if a single one of the people named in his indictment, the Russian supposed spies, will ever come to light. And the reason I say that is because anyone could have written that. That looks like Christopher Steele wrote another Russian garbage dossier with the help of Nellie Orr. They went to Wikipedia, they looked up, and they Googled, who is the biggest Russian troll company? And it comes up, and that's the company they then blame on being Russian trolls. But Russian trolls who went after the American election, who they show in their own evidence, and it's always beautiful. That's the only evidence they have, which is in the indictment. And it shows that somehow these Russian trolls put up memes and tried to control things by being both on Trump's side and against Trump, both on Hillary's side and against Hillary, literally starting marches supposedly, which I never saw any of those marches come to pass, so if they did, that's shocking. But they did cite two people who actually had a sign. Literally, the evidence is in two instances that someone held up a sign in front of the White House that said, "Happy birthday, boss, 55. Now, no one even knows what that means, but supposedly that was Russian intervention in the election. Another person held up a sign that said something bad about Hillary. Those were serious elements of the evidence presented, and other ridiculous things. Ridiculous things. Please look at it if you can, if you have the stomach for it, but it doesn't show any Russian connection to the election. It shows that two people who supposedly, out of the 13, and maybe a third, came to America, one for 2 days, the other two were here for 22 days, and in that time they supposedly set up 470 PayPal accounts. They got into banks through U.S. people who they can't name. They somehow magically were here at other times, which they only say they only entered the country, in these very specific dates and for very limited times. But somehow they had tremendous magical effects to get people out on the street, both for and against both candidates, as well as other candidates in the election on the Republican side. So, what was their influence? Well, when they ask good old Dude Zuckerberg if there was any Russian interference, Dude went back and checked his books, and he found, lo and behold, there were 470 separate accounts that seemed to be tied to all one thing, and they seemed to be running, ads that, were political, and they spent $100,000.
And they got a lot of bang for their buck. I mean, Hillary spent what, $2 billion, $1.5 billion, and tons of money, and she had all of the spying agencies helping her, and the Obama corrupt regime, and the government, and George Soros, and everybody, and she lost.
A shout out to my dear friend Lionel, who characterized this as, oh yeah, I can see this. Okay, there's Putin, and there's the guy who comes from their big Russian troll farm, and he comes over and he says, Putin, hey, I did a good job. I spent $100,000, and I really influenced that election so that Hillary would not win, and your friend Trump would win. And I spent $100,000, and I created 470 separate individual Facebook files that I influenced people because I told them what to think. What do you think Putin would do for that guy? Siberia? The Gulag? Death? Prison? I don't know. Can you imagine such a thing? The entire influence that they describe one person could do in a few days. So that's the influence. Plus, I'm going to tell you the truth of what really happened in just a minute. But that's what they're trying to blame on these poor 13 Russians. Well, okay, we'll see if any of those Russians ever come to light. And if they, supposedly they work for this company, what's it called? Internet Research Agency, LLC,
well,
out of
St. Petersburg. How will we ever know? I mean, really, how will we ever know who they are?
It's kind of like that Russian plane that went down, and they said to these key people connected to Hillary went down. Well, you don't know anything in Russia.
I don't know. It's sort of
whatever they tell you, are you going to really believe that, even if they told you?
Well, it's sort of like crisis actors, except for these are names that you use. They're crisis names that you need in these crises for false flags.
Here's what they did.
Okay, I'm quiet.
They've spent tens of millions of dollars in the Mueller investigation, and all they did is they went and they looked up some Russians who came into the country that are probably dead. And now they say they worked for, this company that anyone could look up in Wikipedia. Literally, if you Google, what is the large, or just ask Siri, isn't that the name of it? You can ask your computer, ask your phone, what is the name of the largest Russian troll farm that Putin uses? And who does he go after? He's in an election. He's going after his guy. Where's his guy? He's been put in jail twice. 2,400 people are locked up. When Putin does something that's very real, he went after Ukraine and the whole thing. What did he get? He got 2 provinces of Ukraine, didn't he? Okay, so you're not going to mess with Putin's troll farm to accuse them of being the ones. This is like Dmitry Alperovitch accusing the Russian Secret Service and intelligence agencies for hacking Hillary's server. They would be embarrassed to admit that they hacked Hillary's server because everyone had hacked Hillary's server and her personal account and John Podesta. The whole DNC and DCCC and everyone had hacked them if they wanted to. But they weren't hacks. They were breaches. So did Mueller investigate any of the Russians I just mentioned? Felix Sater, Dmitry Alperovitch, his dad, Michael Alperovitch. Did they investigate the other Russians? Alexei Gubarev, who they accused of being the hacker in the dossier. Oh, has Mueller called in Christopher Steele to testify, by the way? Oh, has he called in Glenn Simpson? Wait, how about Glenn Simpson's wife, Mary McCoby, who says he wrote the dossier? Oh, have they called in John Podesta? Wait, Mueller, he must not be done with his investigation because the real Russian collusion, he hasn't even started calling those people in, and he's not supposed to say who he calls in or for what. He has leaked everything he has done that we know of. And who did he go after? Exactly who he said, low-hanging fruit and Paul Manafort. Even though low-hanging fruit will probably get out of it. Will these Russians, you think, will go indict them in Russia? You think Robert Mueller will take some yellow cake uranium-238 for Hillary over to see Putin and say, hey, by the way, hey, I got this list of 13 spies. They work in your troll farm. I need to indict them. Would you mind if they just came on back to America? He is a joke. This indictment is on the same level as the garbage dossier. And anyone who thinks you're going to get anything out of this except what Rod Rosenstein came out. By the way, Rod Rosenstein signed basically for a FISA warrant and put his career on the line, saying that Carter Page was a spy when he was working for the FBI. How come he's the one who announces what's going on with the Mueller investigation into the Russian meddling? Okay, the Mueller investigation has reached so far, it reached back to 2005 and Manafort's wrongdoings that they've been trying to catch him for, but they didn't reach into what's on the news? How about Noonan's memo? Did it reach into that content? Don't even get me started on what is ignored, but let's just again, look and read it, what you will see. Look at it, read it. What you will see in this indictment for the 13 Russians is essentially there's no evidence. Anyone could have concocted that. It doesn't even hang together in its own presentation. It presents more questions than it does answers, but it does give a narrative that says, look, we spent all this money looking for Russian ties and we found them now. That's what it says. Betsy, do you want to know the truth?
Well, that's what I come to the American intelligence media for, Thomas.
Well, then here's the truth. Talk to SEAL Commander Michael Lumpkin and his IT team, who quit once Trump came to power. They only came to power in their Global Engagement Center, which had the power that you won't believe. Just look it up and go to the government sites. We're doing an article on it, but we can't wait. We have to tell you the truth. It's all lies. Those ads that were placed, they were placed by the Global Engagement Center, Michael Lumpkin and his team. When they quit, they were basically complaining that Tillerson, and even before then, that no money was being spent on the Global Engagement Center. This center that was set up the last year mysteriously by Barack Obama. And where was it set up? In the Department of Defense's Broadcasting Board of Governors office, directly connected to the U.S. Digital Service and to its branch, which was the Hillary Campaign Center. And what they were doing is they were putting out memes and they were running it through fake accounts. And of course they were blaming those fake accounts upon the same place on Russian footprints, on the same place that, like Dmitry Alperovich, when he got caught in the Ukrainian artillery scandal, he was using old, outdated Russian footprint signatures that Vault 7 shows, and everyone else already knew that it was fake. So Dmitry Alperovich and his footprints in the hacking, supposedly, of Hillary Clinton and John Podesta's accounts, the DNC and their emails, complete nonsense. It's the opposite. Now, we called it, the Global Engagement Center, we called it the Ministry of Truth when it was set up. We jumped up and down, and some members of the conclave almost had a heart attack because it couldn't be any more blatant what was happening. The second that they determined they needed to have Russian interference run for Hillary so it would be thrown back at Trump, and so he would be accused of all the Russian things that Hillary and Podesta have already done, Obama set up the Global Engagement Center, which is the pinnacle of the fact that the Board of Broadcasting Governors controls everything that's broadcasted. They not only surveil it, they can control it, they can target it, they can manage it, they can eliminate it, whatever. And so in the article, we're going to have Michael Lumpkin telling you in his own words, when he was the head of the Global Engagement Center, he could just pull up one of 40, 50 different programs on a dashboard, target anything he wanted by saying somebody's name or by age or by group or by belief or whatever they wanted, and go through Facebook and Google and instantaneously call up anyone they want. Then they can target them and destroy them if they want. But better than that, he said, is what they did with their PR department, which created memes, articles, and hundreds of accounts of fake accounts, basically going into Facebook and other places to dissuade people from bashing Hillary Clinton, to give people who talked about Trump a seriously hard time.
And she still lost.
And she still lost.
That's because the left can't meme.
That's the reason that Lumpkin got so mad, because they failed their job, really. He quit first, and then his 3 top tech guys quit later, basically because Trump sent in 3 people to assess the situation and said, oh, this is completely wrong. This is criminal. This had probably something to do with meddling in the election. So if Mueller, Robert Mueller III, would simply do his job, the first place he would have started was the Global Engagement Center, where they admit that an entire department they have creates fake memes, fake ads, and fake accounts to pay for those ads. And this is, they say this openly. They said it openly before they were hired, why they were hired, and after they quit. And we'll have it in the article, but I'm just about tempted not to write the article because it's just too sad that we will have people believe that Mueller discovered Russian influence in the election, when he in fact has done nothing but what we said he would do: come in, clean up, get rid of the evidence, come up with some mild story, say that Trump didn't have any collusion or with the Russians. Why? Because he didn't. And threaten impeachment, because remember, he was the group that became, the investigation for impeachment became, yes, the counterintelligence investigation, FBI on Trump, called at one point Trump Operation, the small group, the secret society, and then the investigation for impeachment, and then the Mueller investigation. It's corrupt as it could possibly be. It's embarrassing that anyone could believe Rod Rosenstein or any word out of his mouth, seeing that he had direct Russian connection. He covered up Uranium One with with Robert Mueller. He covered it up for Hillary. He covered up all of this corruption. Now remember, Robert Mueller, as we keep yelling, I won't yell this time, but we should yell. Oh, he's the same guy who investigated 9/11. Didn't find anything except, the passport that in complete whole, without any dust on it, landed on the ground and an FBI agent picked it up. That's the evidence they found on that day. That was it. And then some lists of things that we don't even know if they're true. And everything else we were told we know wasn't true. That's Robert Mueller and the way he handles an investigation. So we knew that would happen. We're not predicting much. Now, some things came up that he didn't like, that Michael Horowitz brought to his attention, that Bruce Orer should be fired or imprisoned. He demoted him with Rod Rosenstein's help. Or that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page's texts show that there was in fact a conspiracy to rig the election. Basically, we not even in relationship to the Russians. That's what they tried to blame him on. But rig the election both with the Carter Page fake dossier and with George, how do I say it? Papadopoulos. And that entire fake investigation, both ran by Comey, which then was later handed off to Mueller to cover up, to clean up, to fix, and to move on. But, as we said from the beginning, make it political, leak everything that is negative towards Trump, harass Trump, make the voters believe that there's still collusion right up to the next, certainly through this election, and all the way up through the 2020 election. That was Mueller's job, to spend 3 years finding what now he's having to bring out a little bit quicker. Will he end? Who knows? If he tries to confront Trump on collusion and stuff, well, Trump's not even going to testify for him. We told you that from the beginning. Trump was playing with him. He's not going to testify. Why are we to testify to a guy who the only evidence he found was to do a plea bargain with 2 people, low-hanging fruit, who he simply entrapped? The only investigation results are entrapment or this nonsense of 13 spies. Here's the spies. You want 13 spies? I'll give you 13 spies. There were 10 female spies at the time Uranium One was going on, being protected by Robert Mueller and by Rod Rosenstein and by Andrew McCabe. Okay? And by Loretta Lynch and by Eric Holder. Those are the 10 Russian spies. And then the other Russian spy was heading Tenam. What's his name? Vadim Mikhanin. And then his assistant, who they haven't gone after. And then the head, who they now have gone after, who was really turned a Russian spy, the head of, what's it called? The Transportation Logistics International out of Paducah, Kentucky, who we pointed out and fingered before Douglas Campbell, who still hasn't spoken to anybody and is dying about the truth of Uranium One. He was under a gag order. It's been lifted, and yet no one has taken no one has chatted with him from the Department of Justice, because let's see, Jeff Sessions didn't wake up from his nap and have his cookies and milk and then say, "Hey, I saw this on the news that this guy. Oh, that's right, I lift the gag order. Hey, maybe I should send an investigator over to his deathbed and ask him what happened." Jeff Sessions, because he says on his deathbed, you still haven't talked to him. Now, so when people ask me about these things, I like to give facts. I don't like to give my opinion, which my opinion can be determined by how loud I'm yelling. The louder I'm yelling, the more I am emphatically affirmative about what I'm talking about. So, Mueller, what will happen? We still don't know. I'm going to give it to those people who say Michael Horowitz wears a white hat right now. He certainly might be protecting his own rear during all of this, as he's in a battle with the DOJ and the FBI, trying to do his job, which was limited by Sally Yates. The Sally Yates that was in the room with Susan Rice, who fingered Obama as being absolutely, completely complicit with not only the Russian dossier, but of course the long-standing FBI counterintelligence operation, not criminal investigation against Trump, but counterintelligence operation. That's why Comey lied 3 times to Trump, to the public, and 3 times under oath and perjured himself to the Congress when he said that Trump was never being investigated. So what we have here is the most historic moments, our good dear friends and patriots, that you should be watching very careful. But if you do not get the inside picture, you may not figure it out. And if you don't have time, like the conclave does, to go over all of this stuff, discuss it, make sure we didn't miss things, and then call each other out on it and say, well, no. Where did you get that piece of information? Well, is that corroborated or is that your opinion? And then once you get it, it all fits like a puzzle. I today, Thomas Paine and the Ass of the Globalist, could make predictions from just what we now logically know from this silly, ridiculous, absurd witch hunt of a report given out by Mueller, which is just so chock full of lies that can't be substantiated, that no one can substantiate it, but he, as we said, made numerous mistakes in this. So if we sit him down and ask a few questions like, excuse me, who are the U.S. contacts they had and why aren't you indicting them? Excuse me, you knew this through the Global Engagement Center that spent $80 million doing exactly this, counteracting exactly what you said Obama set up in December. It became active a couple months later, but December of 2016, when we told you that they were trying to recoup from what happened, in January of 2016, to recoup from what happened in December of 2015 when they found out, they had to come up with the story the Russians are coming, they set up an entire center to attempt to influence us through Google and Facebook. And why wouldn't Facebook and Google have the largest Russian trolling center of Putin's that everyone knows by looking it up on Wikipedia on their list of people not to take money from? Well, now we supposedly are told the evidence is very clear and they have it on all these people and when they came into the country and who they talked to and We'll never see any of that evidence, folks. What we will see is Dude Zuckerberg saying, I worked with the Russians? No, I just read what they told me to read in those little cards. What do you mean I worked with the Russians? No, they told me I couldn't travel to Russians because of this whole Russian thing and because Russians wrote the to win, and worked with Eric Schmidt in Google and in Facebook, the U.S. Digital Service, to help Hillary win. I'm not supposed to be working with Russians. What do you mean? Oh, I have to say I went back and looked at my books and found 470 accounts, which later Mueller... Oh, by the way, let me point something out before I forget this.
Don't forget it, but let me just say to folks, Thomas just said so much. Don't worry. I have 2 article links in the description box if you want to read about what he just said. Go.
Well, I can't wait to read them. Because this is complicated stuff. And unless you make a timeline, you cannot possibly figure it out. But if you keep up with what we're telling you in these audios and in the citizens' intelligence reports, it's basically we are not going to go with the history that the victors are just writing or they hope to write. We're going to go with the victor, Donald Trump, the duly elected president of the United States of America, who actually believes in the Constitution and took an oath on the Bible and believes in the U.S. Bill of Civil Rights, and so on and so forth. So what we're telling you here may come as a shock, but don't worry. The Trump effect's going to get him. And if you don't know the Trump effect, again, go to Truth News Headlines.
No, don't tell him where to go. I'll put it in the description box.
All right.
Okay.
Well, do what Betsy says.
Okay.
Just go and get it where you're supposed to get it by searching it, and you can look up all this stuff. So what happened when dude Zuckerberg was told to read the cards, and he said, well, yeah, look at that. $100,000 spent by the Russians, and that's how they meddled in the election. That makes sense to me. Person who gave me the cards to read, who I really don't know your name because you're, wearing all black and have dark sunglasses on. So dude Zuckerberg didn't know that he was putting a noose around his neck, saying he was colluding with the Russians with these ads, and now Mueller's flushing him. That explains why everyone's going after dude Zuckerberg, because Mueller was planning to flush him anyway. And the guys who really did it already quit the Global Engagement Center. And we told you, by the way, who they are and who else they're connected with. And we told you that they already did this numerous times, as a matter of fact. And I just didn't name Michael Lumpkin. I didn't want to. And I can name the other 3, but I don't want to. Because, guys, we're tracking you. And all you have to do is keep track of the evil ones, and they just go to another, appointee job, when the political cards fall on the table properly for them. So
Now, of course, when you mean you're tracking them, you're looking and watching them through the internet.
Yep.
And through the footprints they leave in the internet. I just don't want folks to think that Thomas is out there, lurking and...
You can go right now and take a course at Palantir and have Peter Thiel teach you to use an open source thing called the Open Source Works. And it's the same thing that Nellie Orr used to create part of the dossier. These things are now in the public where they can go and get it came out yesterday. Anybody who knows the right keystrokes can get your entire Facebook profile. What Michael McKibben of Leader Technologies has told us is called your black profile, what I call Eric Schmidt's alphabet digital box they're going to keep you in. And now it's proven. Now, we knew this through other means, but now it's proven because you yourself, they're giving out the key. You yourself can go look at your own profile because dude Zuckerberg has been busted. Who gave out that key? Oh, that would be the people Mueller's working with. They need a distraction. And so whether they create a false flag somewhere or a partial false flag, or they create a distraction. And remember, false flags don't mean people don't die. These are plans that have been put in place years ago that the president doesn't know about. Oh, guess what? One of them was run by Bill Priestap and his boss, James Comey, and another boss, Andrew McCabe and James Baker. And they tried to put it on Peter Strzok. As we said from the beginning, they would take number 2 position in the FBI counterintelligence department, and they would never tell Trump that during the election, when he became president-elect, and after his inauguration, the group that I've named, with so many names as it changed, I like the investigation to impeach. So that is the Mueller investigation, that it has gone on. We have tons of evidence, and still the Department of Justice seems to be sitting on their hands, and a Rod Rosenstein can come out and read you what Mueller says are his indictments. Guess what? The fact that they have leaked everything about that investigation and the fact that they make public their indictments nullifies the entire investigation. They want Trump to fire Mueller exactly as they wanted Trump to fire Comey. We told you that before he fired Comey. We told you that when Comey perjured himself 3 times in a row, it was on purpose. We told you it was to get a special counsel that would give him immunity. All of those things happened. We predicted it before it happened. This isn't a crystal ball. This isn't psychic perception. These are the paths of clever, evil people who are not smart enough to think that the other people in the world are smart, or even they might have wisdom, which they surely don't have. So
Right.
we're fighting the cleverness of evil here, Betsy.
Well, I have news for you, Thomas. Most of us out here aren't thinking those big thoughts like you do. So keep telling us the story, because as you tell us the story, then all the pieces start filling in, and we get the full tapestry of, of what truth really should be.
Well, to say that these Russian spies came in and they know it, and now they can track it, and they know where they're from, and they know their names, and they know the thoughts in their head, it sounds like it's the dossier where Christopher Steele literally tells you in the dossier, and please, folks, do not take our word for it. Go read the garbage dossier. We have it posted somewhere. You can get it through a search. But just read it. It is such garbage. In many places, in at least 50 places, it tells you what Putin is thinking in his brain. It tells you what the top Russian officials are thinking and doing, what the top richest oligarchs have on their heart. It's the most ridiculous. That's the reason when Christopher Steele first went to his first true trials, when Alexei Gubarov was the only person suing Christopher Steele, the guy who wrote the garbage dossier. Remember, he is a foreign agent. That alone means they should lock up Podesta and Hillary right now. They used a foreign agent to manipulate the election. But why do you always say, even in Mueller's investigation, but we can say that the election was not affected in any way by any of this whatsoever? Not one speck, not one teaching, not one. What was Obama's last words before he got on the plane after the inauguration? Not one vote was changed by the Russian meddling, but I'm going to put sanctions on these oligarchs. You know what they say those sanctions have done now, Betsy? Those are the sanctions that Putin and everyone else, and especially the Russian Orthodox Church, says are American meddling in Russian elections, because those sanctions took away the money of the people who are the oligarchs who support Putin and Putin-connected industries, so he doesn't have enough money. He's lost face, and it looks like old Obama, his best friend, who built the city of Skolkovo, the city of magic technology that we gave them all the technology they're going to need for 10 years and billions of dollars. And that was with the reset button with Hillary. She went over there and smiled big and gave him everything with Obama. They're our best friends. But on the way out, he put sanctions on them. And it's just ruining the election. That's the Russian meddling in the election. Obama not only meddled in the American election through the U.S. Digital Service and the things we've described to you, but he also meddled in the Russian election. So he's doing exactly what he accused Putin of doing. Ahead of time, he did it to Putin, and then accused Putin of doing it here. Now, I want to point something out. And I got so lost, I almost didn't go back to the most important point. You know what the most important point here is?
I'm here.
It is, get ready. Are you seated, Betsy?
Yes.
Did you ever hear the quote of how much money they spent on the 2 previous Russian meddling in the election investigations?
Oh.
The first one and the second one, the joint one that used 5 agencies, like 5,000 people. And remember, Clapper got up and I thought his ears were going to spin around and smoke was going to come out of him, and he was going to grow a crop of hair. He was so upset on the second investigation, because he said that the investigation that was concluded before the Russian meddling, the presidential election, showed that there was Russian meddling. I'll tell you what it was in a minute. And then there was a second one. And it said, no Trump collusion and yes, Russian meddling. And that was some more fake stuff I can tell you about. And then there was the counterintelligence operation that's still going on to this day. And so why did Clapper get so upset? And why are we having a third investigation? And guess what? If you look closely, you are going to see the people fingered in Mueller's indictment are mentioned in the first investigation that Clapper jumped up and down and said, we spent, I forget the amount, it was tens of millions of dollars and an entire, I forget, it was before a year, it was over a year they did this, right? And they said there was none except that, what's the channel, RT and Sputnik? That's it? Go read the investigation. It's really long. I read the whole thing. It's like 100 pages. And then there's one half of a paragraph, literally, that says, as an aside, that there was Russian hacking of the DNC server. And it doesn't mention what they did about it. No evidence. Nothing. It just mentions it as a fact and goes on. And besides that, you will see the fortune they spent in making charts and grams about the effect of Russia Today, which I've never watched a single show of.
I watched that site, but there's really nothing relevant. They don't really get what's going on in America. They see it from an international view, and so they don't really get it. So I don't even post stuff from there.
They didn't even post comparisons of how many people watched those things and how many people watched others. And then they said because there was an increase of 27% over 1 year during the election time, that it shows that there was Russian meddling. And that the hacking of the DNC server, no. And then the second one, what did the second one say? They said it was 17 agencies. And then they said, no, it wasn't 17 agencies. It was 4 agencies. And of those 4 agencies, one, the NSA provided the information. And then Clapper said himself repeatedly, he was the director of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That's Clapper. He's in charge of the 17 agencies. He came out and what did he say? He said, I don't agree with the CIA or the FBI's assessment of the Russian meddling in the election. I stick to my first report, and the CIA and the FBI disagreed. So when Hillary stood up there after her 8 text messages about Trump collusion with the Russians and said she knew for a fact she had been briefed by the 17 intelligence community members, all 17 agencies had all agreed that they had thrown the election to Trump. This was her in the debates. Before the election, she already said that the entire intelligence community said she was going to lose because the Russians had thrown it to Trump. Go back, look at the debates, folks, and you'll see that what we're saying is true. So, I think that's what I wanted to say, Betsy. Don't believe Mueller's lies. These are jokes. It's worse than the dossier. They'll never find those people probably, and if they do, it's not going to be the story as told. Indicting unindictable people, low-hanging fruit. It's just a big witch hunt.